Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. If you are interested in working with me in person, you now have the opportunity with Soul Discovery Workshop. We will spend 2 days discovering your spiritual gifts, unlocking your abilities to channel, to really tap into your intuition, to meet your guides and your angelic team, as well as diving in to the Akashic records. If you are interested and you are in the Huntington Beach, LA area, or even if you're not and you feel like taking a short trip, please head to my website at infinitesoullove.com and you can head to the store. Right there, you will find the Soul Discovery Workshop, which is September 16th and 17th, 2023. Welcome back. Today, we are interviewing Johan Andao. And Johan is a lecturer, and he works with Vedic astrology and Ayurveda. He also does many lectures on all kinds of spiritual topics, including twin union or twin souls. Johan, I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you very much, Annette. I'm glad to be with you.
So the one thing I would like to start with, and I always like to start this podcast with people's stories, because that's how people can relate to each other, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your awakening story?
Yes, when started in, you could say, different times actually, but it started when I was 17 years old. I was in Sweden and I was walking with a friend. We was out and walking and we talked to each other, and suddenly it come a kind of heart opening in me. Before this, I was very negative person and drinking too much alcohol and was not so happy in myself. I didn't believe in God or anything like this, but suddenly the heart just opened and everything became very beautiful actually.
Wow.
And then I asked my friend what is happening with me. Then he told me this is actually the reality is opening for you. So he was a little bit into this spiritual stuff, And then coming home in the evening and I just start thinking what happened to me. And then I just come from nowhere, it come into my mind, I have to go to India.
No
so I called
kidding.
my mother and tell her I have to go to India. And my mother tell me fine, because she was also traveling a lot, so she was very happy about it. And so I just finished my job and then I go overland to India. That time we go overland for Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. This was in 1978.
Wow.
And then I come to India and then it just flashed me when I come into this place called Amritsar in Punjab. It was just a big flash, like a deja vu, you could call it.
Yeah.
And later when I looked this up in astrology many years later, then it was very significant aspects. I don't know if you know it, but this in India we call this Rahu and Ketu. They was exactly in the same place when I was born. This is the south node and the north node of the moon.
Okay.
This is kind of karmic, telling you your past lives and why you have come into incarnation. And this was just on the spot when I come into India. So my past life was actually completely there, and the reason for my incarnation was completely there.
Wow.
So then I stay in India for 4 years. In this process, I meet some people who starting awaken me. But so I come to a temple in India. I'm staying in a place in Rajasthan. This is a desert area in India. And I'm meeting a man. This was 1981. So then I've been in India for a couple of years, and Nepal, and traveling around a bit. So this guy taking me to some holy people, like sadhus or these kind of monks or whatever you want to call them. And they taking me there every day and then talking about me a lot, because something in me start to long very deeply for something. So I have a strong longing in this time because something have opened slowly for me. And then one day he take me to another temple. This was a Kali temple. And I coming into this Kali temple, and it was a man with this white robe and long beard, and his eyes was just shining. So
Wow.
he told me to sit down and drinking tea, and there was 4 people sitting a little bit behind him, and they was all dressed in black. This was Kali devotees. I didn't know much about this in this time because I was still very, very young. But these people,
Mm-hmm.
they're sitting like stones, they didn't move for hours. They are sitting and closing their eyes. I couldn't understand how they could sit so still. They didn't
Yeah.
move at all. And then this man in the white robe, suddenly he also looked into my heart. I could feel his eyes just drilling into my heart, and something just happened in me. And then he went sitting behind me. This time I didn't know this we call in India Shaktipat. Like he awakened my Shakti, my Kundalini. I didn't understand that time, but he's sitting behind me and meditate. And then I could feel in my back, and that's energy moving. But I didn't know about Kundalini or something like that. And then suddenly from nowhere, all these 4 guys standing up, then they went up and standing in front of a Kali statue. This statue was maybe 3 meters high. And then they started making this puja, and this statue is starting to be completely alive. I feel like all this temple was just full of this presence, like it was moving with light and energy, and I was just shaking. All my body was just shaking. And then it was over, and I was sitting down, and then they want these people telling me you need to have these earrings. So certain earrings they wanted to put into my ear. And I can't have that. Why? And then they tell these people who follow and have knowledge about Shiva, they have these earrings, and we have to put them in your ears because you had this knowledge. And for me, it was very absurd, saying, no, I don't know anything about this. I know about Shiva, but I don't have no knowledge. But they said that I have this. And then, anyway, I denied this, and I walk out of this temple, and when I come out of this temple, after this, everything was changed. Like
Yeah.
everything, I never need to hassle about money when I go with rickshaws or this. Like with the people of India, I get always half price for everything suddenly. Everything changed.
Wow.
And everyone started to meet me with deep respect. And when I started traveling, I'm meeting people on the street coming up to me, and they singing songs about God, and many strange things happen. And then I start to meet many sadhus coming up to me and tell me that you are part of our lives. You have to become a sadhu.
Wow.
It was very, very strange because I was so young and I didn't understand, but as feeling, I get more and more blissed out, and I started crying more and more and start to acting very strange, because I see a longing so deeply for God, and this to merge with the divine. And this comes stronger and stronger every day, kind of. And then I had many, many experience of this Kundalini Shakti. And in this time, it was like everything just opened for me. Also, my past life started coming up, and I have some past life in India, and I was this interesting Kali, and have this kind of connection with Kali from past life, and sitting in the caves in Himalaya and meditating. All these memories just started flow my consciousness.
Beautiful.
And in this time, I start to understand, astrology, herbals, everything of this just coming up in me. Also, I get contact with a master called Hilarion, and he started showing me that we're living in a very special time, and we are moving into a new life and a new cycle here on earth. And he started giving me many visions, very, very powerful visions, quite heavy kind of visions. Some years later, I get a book in a bookstore, and then was written about this Master Hilarion. Then in this book, they're telling all these stories, everything I've seen, he's telling in this book. I think it was called The Season of the Spirit. I think he's called John Cook or something, a Canadian guy writing this. He was channeling Hilarion. Or so many things, because he's jumped out from the shelf in the bookstore. And when I see it, thinking this I've seen before, this book in my visions,
Right.
So many things like this. And later, of course, when I started reading astrology many years later, I start to see all this and understand it in a much deeper way. It took me many, many years to integrate this.
Yeah.
And in this, also my coming master coming in my visions also, I start to see him also. So I get initiated by him in 1982.
Wow.
So he is coming in my visions from my inner longing, actually.
So the master that presented himself to you, that was that longing that you were feeling years earlier.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So he was kind of drawing me to him. And then these other things was kind of my past lives, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So my past life coming up very, very powerfully in this kind of energies. And then my master, which I know from long, long time before, in many, many lifetimes back, actually, I remember him. So he was also drawing me. So I kind of, one side of me was in this Kali energy, and one side was, more in this other kind of energy of Raja Yoga. So it's two very different stories going on in me, and both was very, very strong. So
right.
I have to integrate them,
Yeah. Yeah. And that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask is, during this entire time, I mean, you said you were very young when all of this was happening. Did you really understand it while you were going through it? Or is this a lot of sort of hindsight?
It's a hindsight, much of it actually. It took me many, many years to understand. I didn't understand many, many things here, but some things, of course, I understood and awakened to, but many things was laying in my consciousness for years. Slowly, I get some books in my way, some people in my way, and slowly, I integrate it,
Yeah. Yeah. I found it really amusing that when you mentioned that you were in the temple and the four people who were meditating and awakened your Kundalini, that took place and that you were seemingly okay with, but the one thing you were not okay with was the earring. So, I mean, I think that's a really beautiful representation of sort of the difference between what we accept energetically versus what we're accepting, what is in our 3D world, right?
The interesting thing, I read about this kind of earrings about 2005 or something like this. It's a book I'm reading about. One guy is a Kali Bhakta, and he's writing about these earrings, actually. And these certain sects in India have these earrings. It's a kind of Kali sect. They are kind of left-hand tantrics or something like this,
Right. So did you ever end up taking the earring at all, or did you still say no?
I say no.
Yeah.
I never valued the earring.
Yeah, it was probably just not aligned for you then.
No, it was kind of my past life, actually, in some way. I have very strong connection also, with, I don't know if you know Ramakrishna. He was master to Vivekananda, who came to the West, to America in the beginning of 19th century. And he was also a great Kali Bhakta, Kali devotee. And I saw so strong connection to him. And some people tell me that I was around him in past life. I don't know, but I could imagine that it was like this,
Oh, that's really cool.
Crying when I'm reading these books, I just crying and crying. When I hear his name first time, I was just crying so much, It's so strange. That was kind of overwhelmed, for years, actually.
Sure.
Without really understanding what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what made you feel the pull to Vedic astrology? Was it the past lives that you had seen, that you had already had this skill, or was it something that you felt pulled to just in general while you were in India?
It started, when I come home from India in 1982, I come home to Sweden. Then I'm living in this kind of sadhu life for 1 year. Then I get very, very sick. Then my master come in to me in spirit and tell me, you have to go home now. I really didn't want to go home, but he tell me, if you don't go home, you will die.
Oh, wow.
And then I decided, yes, I will go home, after quite a lot of protest from my side. But he really saved my life that time. And then I come home, then I meet one guy, and he was a very famous astrologer in Sweden that time. And I go and have a session with him. This was Western astrology. And then I start to be around him and some other people who know astrology. So I had this kind of hobby, but I understood it in my spirit, my soul, in a very deep way. I understood it from my own awakening, not kind of intellectual energy. I understood it from a very deep point. And so slowly, I started to read Western astrology for many years. And then in the 90s, I was back in India for 91. After some tragedies, I'm coming back to India for 4 years again. And in this time, I started to read a lot of Ayurveda and astrology. And then when I come deeper into Ayurveda, I start to change to Vedic astrology. From the beginning, more from a point of health, I could see the medical reasons to disease. I could see in the Vedic astrology much more clear,
Yeah.
So then I started to change over, but it took some years for me to come over to the Vedic side of astrology because I was so familiar with the Western way,
Yeah.
So today I could say that I'm reading Vedic astrology, but I'm still quite influenced by the Western astrology in certain psychological ways, actually. So I wouldn't call me a pure Indian astrologer. I wouldn't do that. I would call me a mixture.
Sure. And I think that's super helpful too, because
Yes.
it's almost as if you can take the best parts of each and sort
Yeah.
of utilize that for
Yeah.
whatever purposes that are needed for, whomever you're reading for.
I think this East and West had to marry, actually. So I think it's important sometimes to interface with the best of the East and the best of the West. So this is the way I'm looking at it now. Even if I see the Vedic astrology is the old astrology on this planet. We call it the sidereal horoscopes, in Western language.
Right.
This follow, the planets is in the stars, in Western astrology is, in the relationship to the sun. It have nothing actually to do with the starry heavens, For example, now last time it was full moon, it was in the Libra. But in the Western astrology, we say that it's in Scorpio. But if you go out and look at the heavens, you see it in Libra.
Okay.
You understand the difference?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's why you see in the Vedic way, we look at the heavens and the zodiac, the stars. In the Western, it's the autumn and the summer solstice, the 4 solstices, you say?
Yes, in the solstices. Yeah,
Yeah, there are
absolutely.
4, in the autumn, in the spring, in the winter, in the summer. It's this kind of solstices to the sun in Western astrology. They have nothing actually to do with the stars.
Right.
What happened, in the West was that the Jesuits in Rome, they go against the astrologers.
Oh, interesting.
So the astrologers, the 15th century, have to change, the way they're working, and they started working more in a psychological way and not, in the heavens. They took away the heavens, actually,
Wow. I did not know that.
Not many people know this because people think I have sun in Taurus, then it is in Taurus, but many times it's in the sign before. It's 23 degrees back in this moment. But they want, God for themselves, and they don't want the astrologers to see the divine in their readings, actually. So when you're reading the Vedic astrology, you see the spiritual unfoldment much, much more clear, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's so fascinating.
because you are involved the stars and the zodiacs, also the moon astrology, the moon go through lunar mansions, you call it in the West, 27 lunar mansions. This is called nakshatras in Vedic astrology, way to worship, it means, how you worship the heavens. So this is the lunar astrology. So you have the lunar astrology and the solar astrology in the Vedic astrology. Here we have a kind of solar astrology, but we don't have the starry astrology.
Right. And that makes so much sense because I have had other guests on the podcast talking about things like feng shui. Also, my sister studied Ayurveda as well.
Yeah.
And in talking about all of these sort of ancient practices, most of the time when you look back in history, there are various different either governments or powers that have tried to strip away the spiritualness from practices, right? So that's a thing that keeps on happening throughout history, going back thousands of years. So it's not a surprise that you're saying that, with Rome, they stripped away the god from the astrology. Like that makes so much sense. Even though it's something I've never heard, it still makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know. The system is so fragmented, because when you have the full system, you have all the subtle bodies come in alignment, same with Ayurveda, astrology, meditation, or everything coming in alignment with the soul, actually, and the divine, because it's on a clear line from the highest point to the most basic point,
Right.
That's why it's very difficult when you practice Western astrology to integrate it with your spiritual practice. This is I see with my friends, which I learned Western astrology. He was, practicing in meditation, but he couldn't see the meditation through the astrology. He could see the psychology, but not the spirit, I couldn't see the path of the divine in the horoscope.
Wow. Yeah.
It was very, very difficult for him to live this way, because he have his meditational practice and follow the master, same master as me, but he couldn't see astrology as a divine tool. For him, it was a psychological tool, actually. And I could see the same problem, because I couldn't really understand. So I went more and more to the esoteric astrology where you borrow a lot from the East, actually. Then it starts to be easier, but still something really missing. When I get my chart from the Vedic astrology, it was much more clear for me. Much clearer also from people around me. I start to see things much more clear. This is my experience. But I suppose the Jesuits in Rome, that they take away God from the herbal medicine or everything, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we also from psychology, actually, psychology means about the soul, you're learning about the soul, but you don't have the soul, actually. So the same thing all the time, that you cut off the divine.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, and I've spoken about this on this podcast as well, which is, I was in therapy for a good 10 years when I was younger. And for some reason, I couldn't get there. I couldn't get to the place that I wanted to get to. And as you were talking about, you said you felt that longing, that like pull to something. And I always felt that. And I just couldn't figure out what it was and why. And it wasn't until I started having my spiritual awakening through a series of various different events that happened that, one of which was meeting my twin soul. So like finally actually coming into that and realizing that, oh, okay, so all of the psychology and all of the therapy that I went through was super valuable, but standing on its own, you're missing a whole entire piece, right? So once you bring in the spiritual aspect of it, then it all makes sense, and then you can get somewhere.
Yes, exactly this. I mean, exactly this.
Yeah. So then when you are marrying, let's say, the Vedic astrology and the Western astrology, do you feel like it's sort of that same symbiosis that's happening, which is pulling those two things together?
I think I still follow the Vedic chart, but I'm inspired a bit about from Western astrology,
Okay.
especially certain parts of it, because I think in the West we really need to understand on also things in a psychological way. We need that as Westerners. Indians is more okay, with they're coming in too much predictive astrology in India actually. It's not true Vedic astrology, it's predictive astrology. And I don't think it's a good thing, actually. So I think we need to also see, as a Westerner, we need to understand processes from a psychological point of view. Also in the meditative practice, in India, if you want to talk about feelings or emotions coming up when you meditate, everyone's telling, go continue meditate, They wouldn't talk about it actually.
Got it.
We in the
Okay.
West need this kind of understanding, I think. The
Yeah,
same in
I agree.
Ayurveda, in India, they give you as herbs, they don't explain anything, In the West,
Mm,
we need to educate people about the way we are looking at it.
yeah. And I agree with that because from my own experience, the one thing that I tried to do many times and was unsuccessful is to try yoga and meditation and just sit on a cushion and try to meditate. And for me personally, that was not my way to spirituality. That was not my way to get to where I am now. So, I went some really roundabout ways to get to where I am now and to unlocking the gifts that I have in reading past lives and the Akashic records. But it didn't include sitting in meditation for hours on end because that's something that did not work for me. Right.
Mm.
So, did I eventually get to that point of being able to meditate for hours on end? Yes, absolutely. I was able to eventually get there, but that's not where I started. So, I think every person's journey is 100% different because
Yes.
my sister, on the other hand, she has a lot of ties to India. She loves everything about the Eastern way of thinking in terms of spirituality. And so that was her path, but
Yeah.
that wasn't mine. So when it comes to melding all of those beautiful modalities together and all the beautiful belief systems and everything, it's very much about what resonates with each individual person. And in order for them to have all of the information, we have to have somebody such as yourself who, you've experienced the Western version, you've experienced the Vedic astrology, and now you can see both for exactly what they are
Yes.
and be able to really speak to what is necessary for that individual person.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, we have to accept certain things, as like in India, people, you should say the Eastern people, they are to be, we are to know. I think it's to know, from Greece and like this, and to be is very different, but we need both actually in this time of evolution, because I think we are in a step that both East and West, male and female and etc., right and left brain, everything have to come together in this time.
Exactly. So what is the one or two things that you find the most fascinating about Vedic astrology that you really love to get into?
I think the basics I look at, also I look at the same actually in Western astrology, is this what we call Ketu. Ketu is the past lives, my history. And Rahu is why I have incarnated. So I incarnate here on earth because I have a certain longing. I need certain experience. So that is the root, because I want to know where do I come from, my history as a soul actually, and so on. And I really need to know what made me incarnate, what was the pull to down to earth, what was pulling me, what was my longing. So then you have a lot of information just about these 2 points, I think. This is what I tell you, the south node and the north node in Western astrology. Even
Right.
in India, you read it a little bit different, but it's in many ways the same interesting thing, because if I don't know my history and I don't know what I'm doing here on Earth and what the experience I really need,
Right.
then it's very difficult to understand it. This is the basic of karma. This nodes, this round here to go backwards, actually. They go the different way. Around the zodiac, they go backwards. So they initiate, time, actually. So they show our karma, they show time also. Without them, you have no time, We have to overcome these two because the Ketu is blocking the solar channel and Rahu is blocking the lunar channel. So they are blocking actually the sun and the moon, the holy wedding within us, actually. So they are, this,
Interesting.
what you call it, beside Jesus when he's crucified, you have these 2 bandits or something like this, You know in the Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Rahu and Ketu, actually.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you're talking about the two other people on either side of Jesus.
So
Yeah.
one on each side. This is Rahu and Ketu. This is the bandits who is robbing us, of the holy marriage within us, actually. But we
Oh,
have to take
interesting.
these points to a very high level, so the solar and lunar energy can come together and marry each other, actually.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you're talking about twin souls, actually. This can just happen when the solar and lunar marriage happen within us, then you're ready to meet your twin soul. It's a kind of alchemical process within me, actually. And then when I've done this within me and overcome a certain karma, where I'm quite ready for that kind of experience. I need to be ready as I see it, with all kind of relationship drama and relationship karma, actually, where I really are kind of one pointed in my process, where I really don't accept anything else than the divine.
Right.
That this can happen, this twin soul meeting, actually. And that will really speed up our revolution when it happens, actually.
Well, yeah, it certainly happened with me, where meeting my twin soul was basically the catalyst for my entire awakening.
Yeah.
I had been slowly having it prior to that, in little bits and pieces, but nothing major. But then meeting my twin soul, that was the catalyst of it. So when you speak of, let's say, what we would consider the North Node and the South Node, and apologies, I forgot the names of the two people you were saying.
Ketu is the past, the South Node. Rahu is the North Node.
And Rahu. Okay,
yes.
Got it. So when you're talking about those two divine souls that are, coming into union, so to speak, into balance, it is the divine masculine, divine feminine. It is the shadow and the light. It is the opposites of each other, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Ketu and Rahu is kind of shadow planets,
Right.
So they're kind of half demon and half god.
Right.
In the mythology, They are demons, so they get little bit of the Amrit, the nectar, from Vishnu. So they're kind of, but when Vishnu see them drinking this nectar, he cut, off the head, So Rahu becomes the head and the body becomes Ketu. So they are a little bit divine, but also demonic,
Right.
So this means the demonic force is actually necessary for time to exist, or this far dimension to exist,
Yeah, absolutely.
Without that, we don't have these dimensions. We have to overcome these lower frequencies of the demonic energies to awaken, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of why when we sometimes go through that spiritual journey, that we have to dive so deep into the shadow, and it feels like you're going through hell, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When it comes to the study of somebody's chart regarding that alchemical union, do you have that information in the chart of what the most optimal trajectory for that person would be?
You have to study it. I try to understand the plan, that every person have a certain plan before they took this birth. They have
Right.
a plan, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And some people's plan is you have to have children because I lost my child in past life, or I have to meet my husband again. I lost him, whatever,
Right.
something. And we have to have this experience. And after we get this experience, mostly until 42 years of age, we need a lot of experience before 42. At 42 years of age, something happened. This what happened is, that Rahu is maturing itself, meaning like then we have done certain karmas, actually. Some people continue in this karma, but some people kind of awaken in this time around 42 years age.
Yeah.
Find their more dharmic path, or what they are really here for.
Yeah.
The divine mission, kind of, So then you start in a great awakening. That's why it's very difficult to meet the twin soul before 42 years of age. It's very, very rare, according to me. But after 42, it's more easy, because then the male and female are more harmonized within you. Then you can draw this person to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I had not known that 42 was that age, right? But it kind of aligns with a lot of the things that have happened for me.
Yeah.
And I had a Vedic astrology reading a long, long time ago. It was, I think, 2009. And it was prior to my spiritual awakening. It was something my sister, she was, she was studying Ayurveda and she was very much into all of this. And she said, "Oh, I think that you would really enjoy a reading." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll give it a shot." And so I did. And I was so not ready for that reading. I was not ready to receive the information. The gentleman who read for me said that the business that I was in at the time, I was a designer. And he said that, "Oh, you're going to be very successful. The design business is going to be very successful. And, around the age of 50, you're going to become a spiritual teacher." And I just started laughing. I was like, "That's ridiculous." I was like, I can't even imagine that happening. Like, what are you talking about? And it's very, very amusing now because now I am 49. I'm almost 50.
Yeah.
And I am reading the Akashic records, helping people through their healing, helping people through their spiritual awakenings.
Yeah.
I have this podcast, like all of these things. It's very amusing to me. But when I met my twin soul, it was before 42. So I believe I was, if I remember correctly, I believe I was 40 when I met him.
Yeah.
Definitely not ready. And it was an explosion of absolute ridiculous proportions, which then did kickstart my spiritual journey. So grateful for that. But yeah, I can see where, meeting your twin soul before you're ready is definitely not an enjoyable
really
experience. Say it again.
It is really, really hard if you meet the person before 42 because it gets very chaotic, you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it can happen, of course, it can happen quite early sometimes, but it will be a really difficult journey, actually.
Yeah.
If you do it in the higher ages, when we have this golden age or silver age and like this, you can meet them early. But now we are on the way out of this iron age, actually. So it's very, very difficult times now for many thousands of years, actually.
Yeah, sure. So when did you meet your twin soul?
She's sitting here. I met her 2017.
Oh, okay. So relatively recently.
Yeah, relatively recently, yes.
Beautiful.
But then I was, like both of us was quite ready for it. So it's been very calm experience and very easy experience, actually, and very, very loving and fully accepting each other and ourselves in this meeting. So no drama, actually.
And it's funny because I did a channeling about a year ago about exactly that, about how people who meet their twin soul or their twin flame within a certain time frame. I didn't say an age. It was actually the channel gave me sort of like time frames in terms of years. And they said that, they've done, let's say 95% of the work. And so the last 5% or the last, 3% or whatever it is you end up doing together, which is a really beautiful way to move on this journey. And yeah, it sounds like that's where you are. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's because we both have done this inner alchemy by ourselves. I think it's very, very easy, very, very peaceful. When we meet and we kiss first time, it's just so silent and so peaceful and so beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
So it was
absolutely.
not all this love story. It was just pure love from the beginning. Also that you're coming into the sexual alchemy very, very easy. It's very automatic, actually.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yes.
Incredible.
So everything with her have been very on the rail, actually. So easy, everything.
Oh, that's so great to hear. I love to hear stories like that because I know a lot of twin flames that I work with, as well as my own journey. And a lot of people have had a really rough time of it. So it is nice to hear when you can know the story of somebody who has had it easy, who is able to sort of have that alchemical connection, right? And it's encouraging.
I think when you are integrated with the divine within yourself and you're meeting someone else who is also integrated with the divine in herself, then you see this divine being within her and within myself,
Right.
So it's so easy to accept each other and everything about each other.
Right. Beautiful.
Mm.
So when it comes to Vedic astrology, how would you recommend somebody use that as a tool in terms of getting a session, or do you use it on a day-to-day basis? How is it typically used?
The most people think, you go to astrology and you know about your future, blah, blah, blah. This is the image that most people have anyway in Sweden. So people come to me mostly to know what will happen, when will I meet someone, when will my job be better, blah, 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 like this,
Yeah.
But mostly I would like to have use it as a tool of awakening.
Yes.
And working maybe over a year or two, every second month or something. Mostly I do this with certain people, more like in a therapy, and then I'm using flower essences, homeopathic remedies, herbals between the sessions. And then I'm using the chart to see which planet is the problem, and also using mantras for the planets and these kind of things, to making these chants for the planets and see what is active in this moment, what planet is active, which planet do you have to move through. Like you're working to heighten the vibration of all the planets, actually. Meaning, also that in all your chakras, you sublimate the energy and make it more and more refined, actually. This is the way I would like to work with people, because one session is too little sometimes,
Agreed.
I would like to, work longer with people. Some people need just one session, of course. For them, it's just you get a feedback and they can go. And they're fine, actually. But many people should be good for them to have many sessions and work with it as a tool of awakening, actually. I get more satisfaction out of it.
Well, and so does the person who is working with you, because we start embarking on this spiritual journey. And I know for me, initially, I started using tarot cards and things like that. And when you are first starting out, you start with the future telling, right? You start with the, what's going to happen? Am I on the right path? What am I going to do? How is this going to work? And all of that. And then once you realize that your path is actually unfolding before you, and you have to move through the path, not avoid the shadows, not avoid the obstacles, right? So as you're saying, when you can see the planetary alignments and how everything is situated for a particular person, you can sort of let them know, okay, well, this is the shadow that you're going to be working on for this month or for next month, that, you know, be prepared that this is going to come up, and then you can have the tools ready for you when you're ready to move through that. Yeah.
This is the way I want to work with people. It's much more interesting. But many people don't know, even if I write about it, I speak in my lectures about it and my YouTube channel about it. But it's really difficult to get this into the people's consciousness, actually.
Yeah.
Because people have this idea also, as you say about tarot cards also, I know them, of course I know tarot cards also, but it's a lot about the future. And then of course they see astrology in the same way.
Yeah.
So I'm really working quite hard to explain astrology in a more deeper sense in my YouTube channel and my lectures and like this. So did you say maybe I start to break through more in Sweden? I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's kind of sad, actually, because it's such a good tool to know from very early age, actually, you know. Like sometimes I do it on children, you know, very early, and you can start to working with the karma of children, and so they can find the way much more fast and easy. So it's good when they're coming before 27, actually. I think it's a good age to start to proceed in astrology, because 27 to 30 is much thing happened. This is we call a Saturn return. I don't know if you have heard about it.
Oh yeah, very familiar.
Yeah, I understand that you had. So this is very important. So maybe the most important time in a person's life, actually, between 27 and 30. Very kind of emotional time, and you're coming into the reintegration of the emotional body, actually. And it's many things happen in the chart in this time. So it's really good if you can help people moving through this time. Then people will have much easier life and much deeper life and much more honest life, or much more authentic life.
Right. Absolutely.
Because if you miss that kind of train, or you could say, then your life will be very difficult.
Yeah. When you rail against the path that you're supposed to be on, or the path that is that I should say, the path that you agreed that you were going to be on before you came here. You know, when you sort of go against that path, of course, your life is going to be difficult, because you're going against the grain of what you've agreed to do.
This is exactly this you're saying now is what I want to tell people. You have a plan. Please follow your plan, then your life will be magical.
Yeah.
Because I see this, when people do what the horoscope tells and really understand their plan, their life gets so unique, actually, so wholesome, so excited, you know, this so authentic kind of life.
Right.
You get out of this, you know, that you follow everyone else or believe what the society says. You follow more your path.
Yeah.
And then people get really happy.
Exactly. And the challenge I think that most of us have, and myself included, is not getting caught up in the 3D world in the day-to-day life, because that's what's going to show you where you're not aligned. So it can be very helpful in that way. But if you get caught up in that misalignment, then you can sort of go off path.
Yes.
Right.
We need the spirituality and the love force, or the divine force in the daily life.
Yeah.
We have to practice our spirituality in family life, or in relationship, or on a job, with our friends. And in the normal life, you know, that we really need this spirituality.
Yep.
And this is very difficult for people, I see, because many people would meditate in the morning or the evening or something like this, you know, but the rest of it, they don't have any spiritual practice.
Exactly.
So this is really a strong thing I try to also make people understand.
Mm,
One thing is
mhm.
like you talk about twin souls and like this, because then you get this kind of spiritual practice in a relationship, because so many people are stuck in relationship as I see it. And you don't come any deeper than your relationship is actually in your spiritual unfoldment. And I see so many people, they can't talk with their partner actually. They can't understand each other. They don't have what I see, the potential in the horoscope. I don't
Mhm.
see in people's relationship mostly,
Yeah.
because we move in this kind of wrong frequency.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's because, again, people get stuck in the idea of what a relationship is
Yes.
versus what that divine connection
Yes.
is. And they can often be two different things.
Yes.
Ultimately, what we want to do is to redefine what relationship is
Yes.
as it pertains to the base or the foundation of the divine connection first,
Yes.
and then basically the relationship evolves around that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it gets very easy to have a spiritual life in your daily life.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it gets really difficult, because you have a 3D relationship and then you try to move out of 3D. It's almost impossible.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
I see this so much and I try to lecture about it actually. In
Good.
astrology, it's because Venus and Mars coming together, but in older times, before this fall, you could say it, about 5,200 years ago, when Kali Yuga come, the Iron Age. Iron is Mars. So Mars and Venus coming together, the war god is together with the love god, you could say. That's why you say, in love and war, everything is acceptable. You know this saying?
Right.
Do you have this in English also? Or is,
Yeah. In English, we would say all's fair in love and war.
yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
this is so wrong. That's why the energy gets very kind of low, because Venus and Jupiter is meant to be together in the olden
Mm-hmm.
times. Jupiter is the
Mm.
wisdom god. So Venus, the love goddess, should meet the wisdom god, Jupiter.
Right.
So they are the couple before the fall.
Oh,
So when you stay
interesting.
thinking about the wisdom and the love together, then you have a really something going on. But
Right.
war
Absolutely.
and love can't move. They are enemies. So you're together with the enemy. This have to do a lot when people in this Kali Yuga starting, was so much rapes. The armies and the negative male archetype rape all the women. So the woman's looking for that one who has, I don't know in English what you call it, but sometimes when people in young age get raped, then they're looking for this raper in other people.
Oh, sure. We would call it in English. It would be transference,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
Mm-hmm.
why this happened all the time, that Venus can't see anything else than Mars. Can't see Jupiter, but in astrology, in Vedic astrology, as Jupiter is her husband. For every woman,
Mm.
where Jupiter is also your husband, except, the seventh house, of course, is the marriage house, but also Jupiter. For me as a man, Venus is always my lady, but also my seventh house. But if you
Right.
look at the woman's horoscope, you see all the time that they're searching for Mars, actually, not Jupiter. It's very, very rare that a woman also navigate to Jupiter.
So that would be the wounded feminine,
Yes,
in fact.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's why we as a woman really need to heal herself from all these rapes and this kind of violence,
Yeah.
so she can come up in the heart and see Jupiter actually.
Yeah. And even if you want to take it to a sort of another level, let's just put it that way,
Mm.
it's often sometimes where you are wounded in your father issues. So
Yes.
for me, my father very much loved me, but he didn't love me in the way that I felt he should love me, right? So I wasn't able to receive the love that he was giving.
Yeah.
And so I was constantly dating other people, trying to find somebody who would love me in the way that I needed to be loved. But I kept on finding the way that he treated me, or at least my perception of
Yeah.
how he treated me,
Yeah.
right? So that's that wound that keeps on
Yeah.
showing up in you,
Yeah.
that keeps on showing up and showing up and showing up until
Yeah.
you heal it.
It's so deep, this wound, I think, in our history, because it goes for thousands of years.
Right.
And if you think about it, in many countries on this earth, you can understand the woman's right. And if you go history back, hundreds of years, thousands of years, you can understand the male archetypal of this marsh energy, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
The woman have just to accept,
Yeah.
That's why it's so difficult to break this kind of spell, actually.
Well, and the interesting thing is that the age that we're moving into is the age of the divine feminine.
Yes.
But before we can get there,
Yes.
we have to heal the feminine first.
Yes. Did you see this for a couple of months ago on the heavens? You see Jupiter and Venus coming in conjunction. You saw that? You could see it.
No, I did not see that. No.
It's difficult to see it on the heavens. I don't know. But they're coming, closer and closer in Pisces, actually. They're coming together, and then they were so close. It's very bright so on the heavens. They are almost kissing each other.
Oh, right. I do remember this.
Yeah.
Was this was just a couple of months ago, you said?
Yeah.
I do remember that.
So this was very significant happening, actually, because Venus is on exaltation in Pisces, and Jupiter is, is in his home in Pisces. So this is very powerful conjunction. And then Neptune has moved into Pisces also, so it's very strong love energy. And then I could see this, that, Jupiter and Venus coming together again. Because in Indian mythology, Ganesha, the elephant god, he's Jupiter.
Yeah.
And he's always together with Lakshmi. Lakshmi is Venus, When you see a picture of Ganesha, you always see Lakshmi. And if you see Lakshmi, you always have Ganesha around the corner.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that. I'll have to notice that now.
Because you never see Lakshmi with the war god or with Mars. You always see her with Jupiter,
Yeah.
Or if you're reading the mythology of India, how Sita meet Rama, or Radha met Krishna, or Parvati met Shiva. They're always searching for the wise man.
Right.
Jupiter, isn't it?
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that so much.
Yeah. So this is really powerful. So I'm very hopeful after this conjunction that it's a sign of a shift, actually. I hope so.
Absolutely.
I think so. So I'm very hopeful anyway.
Oh, yeah, me too. That's really great. And thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
How can people get a hold of you? So you said that you do prefer to work in person. Is that correct?
Yes. I work in person also, so they can mail me. And then they have this channel between but this is in Swedish, of course.
Right, of course. So if you are in Sweden at this moment, you can go to your YouTube channel, yes?
Yeah, your YouTube channel or my homepage. You just on my name, Johan Andao, or Twin Union is also our homepage. You can go on this also.
Beautiful. So his website is AND as in David, AO.SE. And I will put the links for the YouTube channel as well as the website in the show notes. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Johan, so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned so much from you. And I appreciate you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Annette, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have an amazing day and never stop exploring your soul, because it is the most important relationship you will ever have. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.